Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. I think that we are live now. That was interesting. For some reason, everything just died on my end. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show, my friends. It is Wednesday, October the 29th. We are on the 29th day of the government shutdown, and I've got some information about that. Seems like the angle that's being played by the media is going to be sympathy for the air traffic controllers. Anything to drum up sympathy. They tried SNAP. They're going to try people who have a job and work for a living. So that's what we're going to see. We'll go through some of the interesting sort of, I don't know if it's propaganda, but it's certainly a position that is being taken by the mainstream media. And I know that because yesterday I was trying to put together a video. What I wanted to do was a compilation of people saying the word shutdown as sort of an opening, and then I was going to go into the discussion of how I think it's problematic that our FBI director is flying around on a private jet while the people who are controlling the air traffic, who are fixing the vehicle, who are working on, that are servicing the plane and so on, are not getting paid. And that seemed like it would be a fun way to get that done. So I wanted to go get like shutdown. So I go out there and look for people talking about shutdown. And what I got was dozens of videos, and I grabbed a handful of them that were talking about the air traffic controllers specifically. And I didn't go looking for them. That's just what was suggested to me. I don't think that has to do with my algorithm. I think it actually has to do a lot with what is being pushed at the moment. So we're going to talk a little bit about ATC, sort of that thing. I want to at least give you guys some exposure to the same thing that I saw. You can make up your own minds. I think it is a sympathetic position in general. Like, it sucks to go to work and not get paid. It also is something that has happened before. And as I keep saying, my sympathy is in existence. And yet, if you can't survive a month without pay when you are well paid as a federal employee, you've made a bad choice. Nobody is guaranteed anything in this world. Many of us found that out during COVID. Many of us found out that our jobs that were stable and were found us to be essential and important workers were more than happy to ditch us. For what? For a failure to comply with the passing sort of orthodoxy that happened? Even though it turned out to be illegal, it was actually unconstitutional. Most of us saw that up front. So I'm going to show some comparisons. What I think is universal among Americans, and I do think that politicians miss this. I don't know why they miss it. I don't know why it continues to be a thing that eludes Washington, D.C. But it occurs to me that hypocrisy is something that almost all regular people abhor. And if you don't see a problem with hypocrisy, I think you're an outlier. I don't think that you're common. I don't think you're a regular person. There are some real similarities. Yesterday, we did an entire show about the FBI director's jet situation, and I don't intend to do that again today. But I do want to draw a comparison to why it resonates, why there are over 1 million people that have seen and been interested in the story, whether it was me covering it, whether it was Ryan Matta, whether it was other different outlets that were discussing. This is problematic, and it is because of hypocrisy. Saying one thing, doing another, presenting values to the public, and then not living those values. That bothers all people. It's one of the issues that people have. It's kind of the thing that keeps Donald Trump from getting in trouble, because he never presented himself like, I'm just a regular guy. He's like, I sit on a golden toilet and you don't. I'm not like you. I can buy your car with your kids in it, and I think it's funny, and you think it's funny. That was the lure, is that he at least owned the fact that he's not like regular people because he has more money than regular people, even if he's not the richest man in the world. Hypocrisy is the problem. Presenting, I am like you. I'm just like you. And then the minute I get an opportunity to not like you, I'm like, oh, let them have shutdowns. I still have places to be. I'm still important. Bleh. Nobody likes that. So that's what we're going to get into. And there's some stories about that. And then the economy looks like it's making a turn that's going to get uglier. Rates going down at the Fed, hiring going down across the country. So we face the potential of stagflation and some other stuff that are, relevant to most of us. We're going to touch all those topics. First, we're going to talk about my friends over at Patriot Coolers. And yeah, times are tough. Sometimes you might need to preserve some food. What if your refrigerator goes out and you don't have backup power for that? Might be a thing that you want. It's a survival tool. It's also a good camping and hunting tool. It's a good RV thing. There are many uses to it. At the very least, you could just maintain your food. It finally dropped below 70 degrees here in Texas, America. We've had a 50-degree drop in the last, 3 weeks. So it's now in the 50s outside. My kids are wearing freaking snow hats. If you guys want to make sure that you can keep your hot and your cold, I've seen people put tamales in these things too. Check out Patriot Coolers. They make an outstanding thermal molded product. It is as good as a Yeti or an Igloo or anybody else out there, but it says Patriot on it. They support our program. I think they're ingenious designs. They're a little bit more modular than the other people. They're squarish. And they'll keep ice for days and days. My children are constantly shocked that their water bottles keep ice for days. It's like an ongoing amusement. They've understood what a new vacuum sealed thermos does. Patriot Coolers is the website. Patriot Coolers with an S on the end of it.com. My promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E, will save you 10% at checkout. 10% off. That's not nothing. $50 or more, you get free shipping. They're a good company. They're good people. They've supported us since basically we went live in 2023 at the beginning. And we're going to be going back in time a little bit today. So that's probably a good reminder that even when nobody else was watching, these folks were supporting our program. We appreciate them. We appreciate you. Let's get into today's show right now. There's a link in the show description, obviously. All right, my friends. So it looks like everybody is on board here. We lost our chat for a little bit. We lost the entirety of the feed, which is always fun to see. I went from queuing up videos, saving them, putting them in position, punching around in my broadcast software, setting them all up, and then I hit live, and everything was silent. And then it went. And if you guys want to know what I was messing with at the time that happened, and I cannot rule out that this is the problem. So if the stream crashes, you know that not only me and my computer system and OBS studio and so on, but also Rumble and YouTube and Locals and X and Twitch all reject the singing talents of one Laura Trump. This is what I was queuing up. I don't even know why I was queuing this up other than I found it to be particularly interesting and offensive. If you have a lot of money, then people will listen to what you have to say or they'll listen to you sing, but it's really gross. This is what I was queuing up. This is what crashed my computer. Hopefully it doesn't do it again. It's so bad. That's hypocrisy. There's a bunch of people dressed in suits and ties. They dress nicely. They came out to go have a nice meal. And then you put a woman who can't sing up, but she's got like a bunch of money. And she's connected to people who are in power. And so everyone goes, ugh. Yeah, clap. This is not like some child's recital. This is a grown woman without singing talent. Why were people tolerating that? I actually don't know. It's beyond me why that happened. I don't know why it was a thing. This is not the first time that I've seen her sing. So, she goes up there and nobody tells her it's bad. That seems like a cruelty. What do you guys think? It reminds me of another person that I've seen that doesn't sing all that well, but apparently does it all the time. So, yeah, I guess some people just like to be looked at and they want attention. That was the FBI director's girlfriend. Imagine going out and filing a lawsuit and hoping that it was going to be a big push to like make you more of a national story. And then everybody just refers to you as the FBI director's girlfriend and nobody knows your name. That's not good. All right. What am I talking about? I'm talking about hypocrisy. Is there a point to this? Yeah, there is. There actually is. On the screen, for those of you that can see it, and for those of you who cannot, that means you're listening on audio and you're not using Spotify. And that is a potential mistake because you miss out on seeing this picture of Gavin Newsom. This is the famous photograph from the French Laundry during the COVID shutdown. This man is likely to run for president, and he's going to have to deal with this, and many of us will not forget. He went to an incredibly expensive, super richy, very exclusive club dinner place, And he did so while everybody else was being told, shut down your businesses. You cannot open. You cannot go out in public. You cannot go to your kids' sporting events. We're going to fill in the skate park with sand lest people go out and have some outdoor activities. We're going to shut down the parks. We're not going to allow any sort of organization of young people who are not in any danger. But I can go and have this very nice meal with my ritzy friends. And people go, that's really gross. Now, Californians apparently don't seem to care. They're willing to have this guy be their governor. And they're willing to have this lady. Do you remember her? That's Nancy Pelosi. She looks awful all the time, but she looks especially awful when she's getting her hair did and she's walking around in one of those like salon robe things that they put over you so you don't get all your clothes wet. There's Nancy Pelosi. And she had a closed salon open up to allow her to come in and get her hair done because she's got to look a certain way. She has to maintain her sex appeal, folks. She's only like 95,000 years old. She's a walking corpse with, implants. We need to have her look her best. She is our representative. And so this is that classic idea. Yesterday I said shutdowns for thee, private planes for me. It's hypocrisy. And I'm willing to tell you that the hypocrisy anywhere is gross. I do not know why people in Washington, D.C. don't recognize that this is not a like, oh, that's my team, so I'm going to cheer it on. Everybody went like, that's not a good look. That's not good. You shouldn't do things like that. It makes us all uncomfortable. We don't want to be able to cheer on our person when they make a misstep and when they show that they don't think that they're accountable to you, the people who fund what they're doing. If they act like they're better than you or they're different than you, if they have that sort of like royal contempt, it doesn't go over. Regular people will flock to it and they will be repulsed. And here's another picture of exactly the same thing. These three pictures all have the same energy. I'm going to fly in a private jet while the people who are taking care of the jet can't get paid. I'm going to make a salon open up so they can do my hair, but I'm not going to let them open up so they can make a regular living. I'm going to go out to a dinner party with my friends, even though restaurants everywhere are shutting down and we are sending police to make sure that the doors do not open. It's hypocrisy. And it's not exclusive to one side or the other. It's exclusive to certain people who are kind of elitists, but they're not the people who actually are like the Donald Trump type elitists. Nobody minds if you say, look, I have more money than you and I've been better than you forever and I'm always going to be better than you. Beep. We're fine with that. We're like, okay, fine. Yeah, whatever. If Elon Musk or a Mark Zuckerberg are like, look, I have more money than God and I can do whatever I want. I want to rent out. I'm going to be Jeff Bezos and I'm going to rent out the city of Venice for my wedding. You're like, that's gaudy and awful and gross, but like, whatever. If Venice is up for rent and you're willing to pay the millions and millions of dollars to shut down a whole city for a day, if that's your thing and you can do it, okay. Like, yeah, you're not like a normal human being. But if you pretend like I'm just a regular dude who just wears camouflage. By the way, my girlfriend also wears camouflage. Neither of us have served in the military. Neither of us have any reason to be wearing camouflage. I didn't even recognize how silly this picture was. Like nothing worse than couples who color coordinate or outfit coordinate. I find that nauseating. But I didn't even recognize it because I can't see camouflage because it's so effective. It just blends right in. You're wearing a military style field jacket with a BDU pattern on it. And the other guy is wearing like Blammo. Do you know what Blammo is? Blammo is like blue camo. I think it helps the Navy blend into the ocean. So if a sailor goes overboard, they disappear forever. And you never have to worry about them. Blammo. I don't know. I put this together yesterday because I couldn't help it. Once I realized that the people that are the Chris Wrays, that are the Gavin Newsoms, that are the Nancy Pelosi's, that are Kash Patel, that are Jim Comey, that are Robert Mueller, that are all of these people. When these people reveal themselves, you can't help but see it. You can't get away from it. I made this video because I went like, oh, this is what happens when the same words come out of different people's mouths. It tells me that once they get into the job, it changes them. Or the type of person who wants that job is always the same. And they're all awful. This is Kennedy's Law number 1. If you're familiar with this podcast, the original producer and the creator of the Kyle Seraphin Show, he came up with a law. It just says, if you put somebody in the FBI director's chair, they all become Jim Comey. Mueller becomes Comey. Sessions becomes Comey. How do I know that? it's pretty clear that these people all do the same thing. They all have had problems with executive perks. This is a story going back years. Coney's final flight and the DOJ's controversial jet stream. We've been talking about this since the 90s, folks. This is 30 years of FBI directors taking advantage because the minute they get in there, they become very entitled. And I'm going to play you a little bit of entitlement, and I'm also going to play you some fun. Kudos here to one of our regular callers on our call-in show. This is inspired in some part by Renzo. And those of you who listen know who I'm talking about. Renzo, thank you. Renzo helped me realize that Tropic Thunder and the like a humorous take on this is the only way that I can do it. But this is Josh Hawley. This is Peter Welch from yesterday. This is Kash Patel. And this is Chris Ray doing the thing. This is what hypocrisy sounds like and looks like.
The universe is talking to us right now. You just gotta listen.
Last time you were here, you had to leave early to take a jet to your vacation in the Adirondacks. Now, let me just ask you this. The whistleblower tells us that you used the FBI jet to make that travel. Is that correct?
All of my travel, personal or work-related, is required to be done on FBI planes. That is a long-standing policy, goes back well over a decade.
Well, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
A G5. Yes.
You were rightly critical of the way that the previous FBI director used the FBI jet.
A G5 airplane. Yes.
The whistleblower also says that you pay only the lowest cost commercial ticket for that Atlanta to DC trip, which is, I don't know, what, $200 or something? When, of course, it costs $20,000, $30,000 to operate the jet. Is that correct?
The reimbursement that I provide is reimbursement that is set by OMB policy, and I follow that policy, which goes back over a decade.
But I pay the commercial equivalent per the regs of the law.
No more frequent flyer bitch miles from my boy.
You wanted to ground Chris Ray's private jet travel that he pays for with taxpayer dollars to hop around the country.
Yeah, you want to know the difference? I live in Las Vegas. I'm allowed to go home. I didn't leave a congressional hearing early on an FBI jet to dodge questions.
A G5 airplane.
The whistleblower also says that you regularly require the jet, which is based in Manassas, to be flown to DC because, and I quote now, Ray doesn't like to sit in traffic.
Yeah, and what I've done with the use of the private jet is use Andrews Air Force Base versus Reagan National as what the other directors have done
Bottom line
to
here,
save the taxpayer dollars.
A G5 airplane. Yes. And lots of money.
On the following weekend, you attended a UFC fight in Miami, also on the FBI jet, right?
That's correct.
By the way, everyday FBI agents who are signed in Washington don't get to fly home on a private jet.
I'm talking G5 for the picker. That's how you're gonna roll.
So, are you telling me that FBI agents who are signed in Washington, but who may live in Charlotte, they get paid by the FBI?
Sometimes they do, yes.
That's right.
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
What many of you may not have realized with that clip that we played yesterday of Josh Hawley talking about a whistleblower, which I told you was me, I forgot that I probably had that email sitting there. So I went looking, and here you see it on the screen. Again, another pitch for those who are watching the video platform. You know what? Let's talk about the video platform. Guys, join the video platform. It's KyleSerafinshow.com if you want to check it out on Spotify. You don't even have to download it, but you can. And you can switch between audio and video, so that's pretty cool. If you're watching on the other channels, obviously, if you're watching on locals, thanks so much. KyleSerafin.com, you guys can see the video there. You can also watch on YouTube. You can watch on Rumble. You can watch on X. Wherever you're watching, will you give us a like right at this moment? You're sitting there. It's real easy. You just go and click on the thumbs up. That'd be cool. If you want to share it with a friend, outstanding. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Look at this. I dug this out of my Gmail the other day. Protected disclosure regarding FBI jet. Oh, so that's really specific, isn't it? I'm going to go ahead and open this thing up over here because I want to be able to read it to you. I want to tell you what we wrote. right away. Simple. Dear Mr. Devine, this is Josh Devine. He represents Josh Hawley. I got your name and your email from, guys, this is the funniest part of the whole thing. That's why I zoomed in on the video. Kash Patel. I got your name and your email from Kash Patel. He said to reference Scott Globbies. I don't know who that is, but that's what he said. I have some information I'd like to disclose regarding the recent hearing with FBI Director Chris Wray and the questions that Senator Hawley asked about the jet. None of the information contained in this disclosure is classified. This is an allegation based on my reasonable belief that these behaviors of the FBI Director Chris Wray include provable fraud, waste, and abuse of government resources in violation of rule, policy, or federal law as described under 5 U.S.C. 2303, 5 U.S.C. 2302. Guys, this is how you do a protected disclosure. You got to tell them up front what you're sending, and then you tell them why. You tell them that you're claiming whistleblower protection. This makes you a whistleblower. For all you guys that have ever any questions, hey, Seraphin, can you prove it? Yeah, I can. These are the emails right there. Boom. Your office may already be aware, but friends of mine are on the protective detail for a number of years, and the director reimburses the cost of the jet. It's determined by the lowest cost flight to the general area he's flying based on the cheapest airline he can find. The example I was given, that his flight from Washington, D.C. to Atlanta would likely be covered by $110 or so, the cost of a coach ticket on Spirit or Frontier Airlines. On occasion, Director Wray also flies on the Gulfstream 5 as well as the G550. Doesn't like to sit in traffic. That was a direct quote. Additionally, Director Wray does not like to sit in traffic from the Hoover Building to where the G550, tail number November 708 Juliet Hotel, sits in the hangar at Manassas Regional Airport. It's either known as HEF or MNZ. That's the code. He requires the pilots to fly to Manassas Reagan DCA, pick them up at a closer location. Guys, all this stuff that you guys heard Josh Hawley go out there and allege, not only was something that I shared with Josh Hawley, it's something that I shared with Kash Patel, and he referred me to Senator Hawley's office. And there's the time-stamped November 22nd, 2022. That goes back almost 3 years to the day. We're 1 month shy of that. 3 years ago, I made this allegation. It's hypocrisy. It looks like this, and people don't like it. And one of the things that came up because of this particular event, this event was a fighting event. I've had multiple reporters reach out to me and ask me about fighting and fighting sports. And does Kash Patel have an ownership stake in there? Is he trying to make something happen? Do you guys remember that if we go back in time a little ways, the FBI director was going to bring the UFC in to teach FBI agents how to fight? How many folks remember that? It was one of those things when we were kind of like, I thought it was stupid right away, for whatever it's worth. I thought it was stupid. Why? Because I've been to the FBI Academy and I know what they teach. I thought it was because he was trying to get Dana White some additional money, that they were going to try to make it a thing where there's an official branding and you were going to have, UFC fighters catching extra dollars. That means that the owner of the trademark and the brand can say we're associated with and we train FBI agents, blah, blah, blah. And that sort of like nasty corporate public-private partnership thing is really gross. It actually went away for a very simple reason. I think. I'm speculating here, but I'm going to show you what I think the evidence is. But I'm going to read the story because this goes back to February 27th. This was a week into his time confirmed as FBI director. The newly installed FBI director, Kash Patel, proclaims plans to overhaul the nation's premier law enforcement agency and may have rattled many within the Bureau, has proposed enhancing the FBI's ranks from within from the Ultimate Fighting Championship, a martial arts entertainment giant whose wealthy CEO, Dana White, helped boost President Donald Trump's re-election efforts, according to sources who were told of Patel's proposal. Now, we haven't heard anything about it. I haven't heard anything about it from my friends. Nobody's gotten UFC training. They're not getting guys that are fighters going out to the field offices to teach, as far as I know. On a teleconference Wednesday, the heads of the 55 FBI field offices, Patel suggested that he wants to help the FBI establish a formal relationship with the UFC, which could develop programs for agents to improve their physical fitness. It's actually not really necessary. You guys can find out. But where did that plan go? What happened to it? Why is it no longer the case? Why haven't we heard about it since then? That was months and months ago. We're now almost at the beginning of November, which means that it's almost 9 months ago that happened. And I think the answer is this. This is a tweet from Deputy Director Dan Bongino. This was going back to the time when the New York Times was about to run a story about how Dan Bongino went down to the academy and got his ass handed to him by a couple of people that actually do train what's called defensive tactics, which is the physical aspect, the ground grappling and so on that they do at the FBI Academy. And he got to see it firsthand, which is why I always thought the UFC thing was dumb. He says, Adam Goldman of the New York Times is getting ready to run another one of their quote-unquote journalism expose pieces on me, spending time in our FBI training facility, ground fighting with our dedicated and skilled defensive tactics instructors. Their big news hook is that after a solid few rounds of grappling, I injured my shoulder. And it's because Adam Goldman, you can generally assume he's wrong, and he is again. The instructor I was grappling with got the best of me because he's incredibly talented, and that's why he's there. And it was not an injury, but a bit of swelling in my right elbow and not my shoulder because I'm 50 and I can't recover like I used to. The amount of pride that goes on in this post right here that you guys see on the screen is significant. First of all, you're 50. That doesn't mean that the people that are teaching at this academy are not similar aged, by the way. Some of them are in their mid 40s or late 40s, and they're studs. And they have black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and other fighting tactics, and they've been doing it for years. They're absolutely very capable. The reason why you would never have the UFC involved with the FBI and why Dan Bongino, I think, realized it after the fact and probably should have up front, because we thought we were bringing a guy in there that knew about federal law enforcement. Kash Patel obviously doesn't. He wears camouflage or blammo to fighting events because he thinks it's cool. But guys like Bongino should know that there are legal standards under which you can use physical force to bring people into custody. He should know that from being a cop. He should know that from being in the Secret Service. You can't just go out there and start doing all kinds of mixed martial arts fighting tactics and Muay Thai because that's just not what you do. We were absolutely told that I was not able. I have training in ground fighting from the military. I've got some combatives experience. We were told you cannot bring somebody into submission with an arm bar. If you get an arm bar, your job is to kick them, create distance, and then draw your weapon and get them to submit with the weapon. And then have them, if they want to come at you fight again, you're supposed to either holster up or shoot them. The FBI has very specific training standards. They're based on what the DOJ standards are. It's the same thing that the ATF and the DEA and everybody else, U.S. Marshal Service. It's what law enforcement always has to go to. There's not an ability to go out there and become a ground and pound fighter, and the UFC would not add any value. And I think Dan Bongino went out there like a macho dummy, and he tried to fight with guys who have black belts, and he did what a lot of people do at the FBI Academy, which is get injured. You know why they get injured? Because they take the training, not for the training value, but they actually try to be triumphant and serious. And that's how you get really hurt. And I think he got really hurt. My buddy saw him right after that, and he was nursing a sore elbow or a sore arm. And I think that's where that thing went. So journalists have been asking me, hey, whatever happened to that UFC thing? Was that the reason why Kash Patel was flying out there? I don't know. I think he's just a poser. I think he's just a guy that pretends. And here's another thing that really bothers me, because this is the really big story that dropped yesterday. And this all has to do with de-weaponizing government or not de-weaponizing government. All of this has to do with non-serious people in probably the most serious jobs they could be in. Something that should scare the ever-loving hell out of you. This came out yesterday. I got some recognition from Kevin Roberts, who's the president of the Heritage Foundation. We had a quick back and forth on social media. When I saw this, I was like, hasn't somebody, I feel like some people, a couple of folks that used to work at the FBI have been trying to tell you all for literally years now. I showed you that the FBI director was probably engaged in fraud, waste, and abuse in November of 2022. There were hearings that came out about it. I've been trying to tell people since September of 2022, when I first sat down to speak to Dan Bongino, and I did so under the following premise. He stated, it could be very powerful for someone to come out and put a face to the allegations being made against this agency. And I did that. Begrudgingly, by the way, with a lot of soul searching and not a lot of excitement in my heart. It was an incredible burden to take on, to lose my anonymity, to lose my ability to have no social media and have nobody know my name and nobody make snarky or shitty comments about me because nobody knows who I am. I'm just a guy raising kids with a wife, trying to do my best to live the America that I want to live in, and seeing that the America that I live in would be invaded by the America that I grew up in. That's what I wanted. That was the goal. This document dump that happened at the House Judiciary Committee, which is what you're seeing on the screen right now, is an exact reason why we needed somebody who understood how to take apart the FBI, and why the guy who claimed that he could do it, who said that he understood the problem, who said, I'm going to break out the intel component and I'm going to get rid of this politicization, has done the exact opposite. And now he's flying around to UFC or Real American Freestyle Wrestling or whatever the BS nonsense he's doing with this half his age girlfriend. He's living like a billionaire, including while the government is shut down, which is tone deaf to say the least, but it's hypocrisy at its finest, and it's just as bad as Gavin Newsom or Nancy Pelosi, except he's not as wealthy, and he doesn't have as much political power. But he's every bit as dangerous because he's not casting this ring that has so much power and has the ability to do so many damaging things. It took down a U.S. president. Do you guys realize that the FBI's influence and failure to do their job in 2020 was so catastrophic to this country that we're still talking about it 5 years later? Is that clear to everybody? We didn't solve the problem in Portland, although we had the ability to do so. We, the American federal government, we, the American people, we, the American taxpayers, we all had the ability because we, as an entity, as a nation, had people embedded in the Antifa elements in Portland that were professionals. They were doing undercover. They were gathering information. I know because I was a part of it, a small part of it. And we should have had the ability to bring forward cases then. And they didn't. Because we had an unserious FBI director who said that Antifa is an idea. And we have a serious, just an equally unserious guy with a slightly different ideology who is equally captured by that same agency that I warned would get bubble wrapped. Fly around, kiss the babies, high five the support staff, check out the jet, have a freaking ice snow pop in the back, snow cones for everyone. Bring your booze out to Las Vegas. Go hang out with your pretty girlfriend, even though nobody's getting paid that's working on your jet. This is really scary stuff. That email that I'm going to show you back on the screen again, it represents the worst of the FBI, but also the most common thing in the FBI. And the people who brought about this email, who brought about these policies, and who promoted the folks and allowed these things to start and then continue, and they still exist, those people haven't been removed. The GS-15 that was over the squad. So imagine this. You're a GS-13. That means that you're a brick agent, what you guys call rank and file. The brick agent is the frontline investigator. Above that is a GS-14. That's a supervisor. Above that is a GS-15. We call that an ASAC in the field. Okay, those are the levels. Agent, case agent, whatever, supervisor, ASAC. 3 levels. The ASAC that was in charge of the squad that did Arctic Frost, that quote unquote spied on Josh Hawley and Chuck Grassley and others, and Lindsey Graham. The ASAC that would have had to approve that sensitive investigative matter still works for the FBI today and has been promoted by Kash Patel. Does that make sense? They don't know what they don't know. And I continue to expose it only because it scares the living shit out of me that we're going to still have this problem when Donald Trump leaves office. For right now, we're fine-ish. They're going to go after anti-ICE protesters. They're going to make a nuisance and go after Antifa. Guess what? The same people that refused to go after Antifa previously, because the previous administration didn't force it, are the same people that are going to go out there and knock on the doors of people that were protesting against ICE, all of whom have a constitutional right to do that. It's the violent people. It's the organizers. It's the folks that are involved in probably like some sort of a RICO charge where they have conspired to do something that is against federal law. Those people are not currently being targeted. And all the same people exist. And all they've said is what's the order, boss? No problem. Round up Christians, you got it. Go after Antifa guys, no problem. Whatever it takes to get to 20 years and get my pension and my retirement. This attitude doesn't make these people morally evil human beings. It makes them good Germans, which, by the way, goes back all the way to October of 2021. My first allegation to Congress was that we have an agency full of good Germans, ordinary men, people who would kick your mother or your grandmother into a freaking boxcar to keep their pension. And that is a belief that is shared very widely among conservative FBI agents, that the people around them are operationally moral. In other words, the means are irrelevant as long as the ends justify what happens. As long as my job continues, I'm willing to keep doing it. Do I have to get a shot? Great. Do I have to stop talking to my colleagues because they won't get a shot? No problem. Do we have to go after pro-life Christians even though I myself go to a Catholic mass? Whatever. They're probably bad people. They're probably white supremacists. How could the analyst be wrong? I don't want to lose my job. I was asked by people to do something. I've got a legal search warrant here from a judge. I'm going to go into the former president's house. This attitude is what you see on the screen. I'm going to read it to you guys for those who are listening. This is from the SE division, which I'm actually trying to figure out if somebody will tell me which one it is. And I can't remember what SE is, but I will get back to you. I'll post it over on social media what SE is. It doesn't really make a difference. It's one of the FBI's divisions. It's going to somebody at Washington Field. This is the so-called transparency that Kash Patel has been offering everybody. Do you see how many redacted squares are on this screen? From unknown to unknown. When? September 12th, 2022. That's 2 weeks before I went and talked to Dan Bongino. I was already out of the FBI by then. Unclassified communication. According to blank, we don't know, who communicates with blank, who we don't know. Blank is a blank of Ed Kerrigan. I assume that like is someone saying a friend. And Corrigan is pro-Putin and anti-Biden. Statement of fact. This is essentially a source reporting document that is not couched in those terms. It kind of says that right there. According to blank, who communicates with blank, that's saying that this person is a source. Whether or not they're signed up as a CHS is another question. Blank, along with blank, colleague at the blank, consider what Corrigan is doing, quote unquote, treason. We are now getting an email that is essentially sharing source type material, which should be put in Delta, which is the system that we use to file source material. And it should also be couched in the fact that this person is a source. So this is their opinion. They're kind of saying that there, but we're seeing it through a bunch of different redactions. Blank believes that Corrigan and his boss, Mark Meadows, Trump administration, are engaging in willful criminal activity. After this, I would put NFI because it's not actually stated what it is. According to blank, Corrigan has blank properties at which he wants to build up infrastructure to train people for civil war. Do you know how inflammatory and wild this is? Corrigan secretly controls the Freedom Caucus, no facts to back that up either, and has plans that are not good for the FBI. And that's where the crux of the issue is. What have I always told you? The number one sin in the FBI is embarrassing the Bureau. The number one thing that would cause you to get on the wrong side of the FBI is talking about doing bad things to the FBI as they believe that they are meant to do. God forbid you have actual oversight coming from outside the FBI. That's why they wrap up every single director. Corrigan hates the FBI, who he refers to as spooks. Corrigan claims to have identified blank as a spook in the blank. He additionally thinks that Kushner, that's Jared Kushner, may have given classified documents to the Saudis as part of a $2 billion deal. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. I've attached the bio for blank. Here's a document about him in our system, which means that this person is a known entity to the FBI. Blank thinks that blank would be willing to talk to the FBI. This is essentially saying we should recruit this person, and here's why. They fit into all of our favorite things. The FBI has not been de-weaponized. And it will not be de-weaponized because the people who are running it don't even know what the problem is that they're dealing with. And they're going to continue to do FBI things. Allow me to do a quick read for my friends over at Silent. If you guys are in the distrustful space because you don't think government is going to look after you, maybe you might want to go ahead and take control of your own data. Your phone is a tracking device. People on January 6th found that out. The only person that didn't find that out on January 6th is the alleged pipe bomber who apparently cannot be tracked. So whatever technology or hoodie they have, you should have. Maybe that person was using a silent Faraday bag. We know that's not true. Government agencies, big tech, corporate data brokers, cyber criminals, take your pick. People who have not your best interests at heart are always fighting for a piece of your digital footprint. They can do it through terms of service. They don't have to ask. They just take it and you agree to it. That's why you have options like Silent. SLNT.com/KYLE is the website to go to. They make everyday Faraday products that block all wireless signals coming in and out of your phone. And that's how you can be tracked. Cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, RFID, near field communications. No signal means no tracking, period. No remote access, no breadcrumbs, nobody being able to dump your phone and find out what's going on. This is the technology that special operations use. This is what people use in the intelligence sphere and what people use in the counterintelligence sphere. And I know because I've used Faraday products. Usually they fail. They almost all suck. That's worth knowing. If you want to secure your comms, if you want to avoid surveillance by any number of people, whether it be big tech or whether the government itself, you can block signals. You can also just get some peace and quiet. You might get some silent time with your family. It's slnt.com/KYLE. Again, silent.com. It's silent with no vowels. That's how you say it. It's available to you to protect your family and your freedom and your digital footprint. Just drop your phone in the Faraday sleeve and go off grid. Get completely silent, invisible to the outside world. Have a little bit of peace and quiet. It is something we all need more of. I do really like their products. You guys are seeing the E3 Everyday Faraday backpack on the screen. Check it out. Let's go to another gear picture. How about this gear picture? This looks familiar to me. Multiple acts of violence were planned against synagogues. Of course. What do we have here? We have an AR-15 and a pump-action shotgun, neither of which look to be particularly expensive. There's not even optics on it. There's a plate carrier, God forbid. Alabama police arrest a suspect who was allegedly planning multiple acts of violence against the synagogue. One of my FBI buddies sent this to me. Said, when in doubt, execute the playbook. Everything about this looks like playbook. You've got a stack of ammo. Look how dangerous and scary that ammo is. That's not even that much. Those are all like 20-round boxes of 20-round boxes or 50-round boxes for handguns. It's like a couple hundred rounds of ammo there. You could blow that in like a range day if you were doing real solid training for a day. I've had classes where I went to where they said, make sure you bring 1,000 rounds for the 2 days you're going to be here. You could burn through like most of that out there. Oh my gosh, look at the shotgun shells on the bottom right. They don't even look like they're the same caliber. Usually the yellow ones I have are usually 20 gauge and the red ones are 12 gauge. I wonder if those are mixed calibers, but they look good in a picture. Look at that long Glock magazine. There's a 30 round Glock magazine. So you're seeing 3 firearms on the screen. What's the story here? The local story for now, until the FBI gets further into it. A person was arrested in southern Alabama for allegedly making, quote unquote, credible threats of violence against several synagogues in Alabama and surrounding states. Do you know why surrounding states? Because there's not enough synagogues in Alabama to make enough threats about them. I'm just guessing. I don't think there's that many synagogues. I lived in the South intermittently. I've lived in Mississippi. I've lived in Texas. I spent some time in Florida. Got friends in Louisiana. There's not a lot of synagogues there. There are, except I guess in Louisiana there are. I knew a lot of Jewish people that were there. The person was arrested in southern Alabama after making credible threats of violence. According to the Clark County Sheriff's Office, multiple agencies were notified of the threat, including the FBI, the 1st Judicial Circuit District Attorney, and the 1st Judicial Circuit Special Response Team. Everybody got the notice. This sounds like an eGuardian lead gone wrong. Suspect was not immediately identified, and then the individual suspected of making the threats was then arrested in Needham. Monday night, after a warrant was executed, they went after the suspect and found that there were weapons, more than a suitcase full of ammo. Well, that's the determining factor. If there's more than a suitcase, you know it's for violence. God, they better not look in my garage, huh? Body armor and other items were found related to plans of violence. That's enough. This screams playbook. It screams it to me. So we'll see. Was this somebody organically, or was this something going on online? Was somebody being followed simply because they said the wrong bad idea out loud and somebody decided to go out there and push them further? Further investigation revealed that the subject had intentions of not being taken alive and yet was taken alive. His plans were thwarted, I guess. And possibly, I love possibly, was planning attacks on public figures as well. All the things that are so bad, all the things that are dangerous. Was this a right-wing person? Was this a left-wing person? The FBI doesn't care. What they care about is, can we get a person? And is that person going to make us look good? It looks something like this. The right is currently trying to cast this thing. That's why we had Mr. Michael Knowles, who is a known expert on political violence, I suppose. He's a commentator at Daily Wire. These guys at Daily Wire seem to get an awful lot of time in front of the cameras and congressional hearings. It's probably because they play nice and they don't call out people for hypocrisy and they smoke cigars. Michael Knowles seems like an okay dude, but every opportunity that people have had to have me on the show with him, including his bodyguards, like reaching out and being like, Michael, you got to talk to this guy. Some of their former like Green Berets and some of the dudes that are like prior military that do security for him. None of it has resulted in ever sitting down and talking to him. You'd think it'd be a shoo-in after my Catholic of the Year nomination and win from Catholic vote. What was it, 2 years ago? Anyway, here's Michael Knowles testifying about dangerous violence. We have to make sure that we say it's only on the left. We can't just say that there are bad actors out there in the world and that people that are thinking that violence is a good answer may turn to violence, whether they're left or right. That would be bad. We got to polarize. We need to give people simple, bite-sized solutions. So here it is. It's the left's fault, guys.
On the left, what happened after President Trump came within 1/20th of an inch of being assassinated? You saw jokes, you saw minimizations, you saw comments throughout social media saying maybe we'll get him next time. There is, in a certain type of left-wing ideology, the belief that ideas don't really matter and that we're really just warring groups that must clobber each other over the head, which is why you're seeing the increased violence there. I think you saw this not only in the horrific assassination of Charlie, but in the reactions that came afterward. As the scene was unfolding, a Democrat analyst, Matthew Dowd, on MSNBC, the left-wing cable outlet, blamed Charlie Kirk. He said, quote, "Hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions." The New York Times reacted by publishing the assassination-related musings of Hassan Piker, a prominent left-wing streamer who has suggested the assassination of Senator Tom Cotton and who has said, quote, of conservatives, "Kill those mother effers, murder those mother effers in the street, let the streets soak in their effing red capitalist blood." I could go on and on with the reactions. We all saw it, and they're reflected in other public opinion surveys relating to approval of violence. So it would appear that this is not merely a matter of some fringe actors, some extremists who simply have an emotional problem, as has been suggested here today. This would seem to be clearly an ideological issue at every level of the American left, which needs to be addressed accordingly, or else we're just twiddling our thumbs. We are not doing anything to solve the problem.
What would you do, by the way, his claim that this clearly looks like possibly that it is this thing at this, there's a massive series of like generalizations that go on in that statement. How about we just say that when people are desperate, they sometimes do bad things. And when people are not included in the system, for whatever reasons, they often result in whatever their most aggressive movements are. And it turns out that our federal law enforcement is incentivized to go out there and encourage that as best they can. And sometimes it could get out of hand. What he just said there was very polished. And yet we can just dissect the words. There was a lot of conditional and potential language in there. And then also some conclusions that are not things that we can draw. How do I know that? Because the world's a messy place. And if you want to draw a box, then say that all political violence exists on one side of the coin or the other. It doesn't. That's silly. It's the same reason why you can't paint our current FBI and say, well, they've decided to change their situation. No, there are problems on all sides of the spectrum. People will oftentimes result in violence, and they do so when they're desperate because their message is not being heard. It doesn't mean it's the right answer, and it doesn't mean we should tolerate it. It doesn't mean we shouldn't recognize threats. It was very clear to me that there were people that were part of an organization that were aligned with an ideology called Antifa. And it wasn't just an idea. How do I know? Because I saw them and that idea surrounded my car. So I'm far more likely to be able to give a nuanced perspective, but we don't do nuance in this country right now. We just do emotion and we beat you over the head over it. And you say you're on my team or on the other team. And if you play nice with my team and you're part of the quote unquote movement, then you can get all the airtime you want. You can go out there and talk to people. Do these hearings have any meaning? They don't. I just played it for you because it's theatrical. It's as theatrical as the claim that Donald Trump is going to run for a third term, which is something that's going out there. I want to talk about some serious news because this may actually bring about some of the real dangers that we're talking about. I saw this article multiple times. This has been up for like the last 3 or 4 days. Various different people have talked about the no hire, no fire job market. And that's not immediately evident to me what the hell that is. And maybe it's not evident to you either. So I wanted to talk about it so we can understand that there are people who are going to find some real hard times. And maybe some of you are in there. No hire, no fire job market may no longer be a thing as big companies announce mass layoffs. If I could just be spared from, I don't know what it is, teenage editors that write horrible headlines like this, because it's really bad. For most of 2025, the job market was described by economists as no hire, no fire, a stretch of time when job seekers faced slim prospects, but workers who currently had jobs could count on relative job security. But that fragile balance may be shifting right now. There's some real big numbers in here that are worth hearing. Because the federal government not working, that's one problem. The fact that we rely on the federal government as one of the largest single employers in this country is terrifying because it's so easily stopped. But let's get into the broader spectrum of how many people are being laid off because of AI and some of the other things out there. Amazon announced 14,000 jobs. They're shifting towards AI and they cut those. This one is really scary. In a year, UPS has laid off 48,000 people. My guess is they've moved to contractors. It doesn't address that in the piece, but that's generally speaking what people do as an interim, and it gives them more flexibility to be able to drop folks at a moment's notice when the technology improves. And people who are not good workers because they're not learning good ethics and understand that the purpose of their job is the function of what they do. They think the purpose of the job is that they get paid if they show up, and that's not how it's supposed to work. So we have a work ethic problem, which I think Mike Rowe talks about a lot, and I've seen in my own lifetime a drop in that. But we also have a technology gap where people are deciding whether or not they want to deal with crappy employees, and some employees are not worth having. I saw about 80% of the people in the federal government. They weren't worth having. They weren't someone that you could work with and get them to do their job without completely slobbing the knob, as we've been saying over here over and over again. Sorry, I know that's kind of gratuitous, but I really do like the way it sounds. Target on Tuesday announced that the state employment agency in Minnesota plans to lay off more than 800 workers in January. That's a broader trend. The retailer said that it would cut more than 1,800 corporate positions as it trims the fat in their global workforce by about 8%. The mass layoffs comes as the Federal Reserve scrutinizes the labor market for signs of weakness. The claim is that without government statistics, how would they know? Well, it turns out we have plenty of statistics from the private industry. We don't need government statistics to tell us. The danger here is that you shut down some of the job market, you take people out of the workforce, you put them on those benefits that are going away, and then you also cut the interest rate so you free up some of the money. And then you end up with inflation, but you don't have a growing market. So it's called stagflation. And that's where you basically have a stagnant economy, but your inflation continues to grow. On Tuesday, job cuts. The layoffs have been trending even higher, according to data from, there's private companies that do it. Challenger, Gray, and Christmas. That's a good name. Employers across the United States have cut nearly 950,000 jobs this year through September, with the largest layoffs since 2020. The official report, federal report coming from the state labor markets, have been suspended because of the shutdown and are other things. And this is right in the wake of people who are going to drop off. They're not going to have access to certain public assistance. And so those of us who grew up in a more hardy society, those of us who came of age in the 80s and maybe the 90s, or those of you who did before, you're at least familiar with the concept of this video game. That was something that we all learned. You could die from anything. You could die because you tried to ford the river and you fell out of the wagon. You could die because Mary got typhoid or dysentery or starved to death. You could die because you have canceled food stamps. If you guys are just listening right now, what you're missing is a great Oregon Trail graphic of a covered wagon being pulled by oxen and the words, "You have died from canceled food stamps." There is a push right now. There is a concern that a bunch of people in America are no longer going to be alive simply because the federal government's subsidy program is going away, even temporarily. And it could be, quote unquote, catastrophic. And so you have people that are getting very riled up. They're getting their constituents riled up. They're talking about it in a way that will make people react in a pretty dangerous manner, I think, potentially overreact. Here is the senator from Georgia. This is Raphael Warnock trying to let people know whose fault it is. We're going to get into kind of the shutdown game here, and I'm going to show you the sympathy play that's being done by the media to try to make air traffic controllers the face of this. I think they're going back to like 80s playbook. That's why this 80s graphic is so interesting to me.
This is a choice that Trump's USDA is making. There's no reason why those benefits could not be available to folks come November. But we are in a moment where we have craven politicians who are literally using people as pawns. I was a free lunch kid. That's how I got through school. I know what it's like to need those benefits. But here's the thing. The folks, particularly in rural Georgia and rural parts of our country, who benefit from the SNAP benefits, whether we're talking about the beneficiaries themselves or the ways in which that is connected to that economy, those are the same folks who are also being robbed of their health care as they see those premiums double, triple, quadruple. Those are often the same people. And so politicians need to stop playing games, stop centering the politics, and center the people. We can fund the government, and we can fund health care. They're in charge of the White House, the House, and the Senate. We're in a shutdown because Republicans are playing games.
All right, everybody's going to try to blame it on the other side. Again, I think that the Republicans should just own it. That would be the right move. They probably shouldn't also have some of the people in their administration flying around on private jets, because that's a really terrible look. Isn't it interesting? They said that you don't have to cancel SNAP. We don't have to do it. You don't have to cancel it because we could declare an emergency and have funds released to that. But here's the real issue. I used to work in emergency. I worked in emergency when things were really obviously emergency and when most things were not. As a paramedic, we'd go out and we would find that people were, quote unquote, having an emergency. And what I often diagnosed was that their life was in fact an emergency. If you're 300 pounds overweight, and that is conservative for some of the people that we dealt with, if you are that far overweight and you have problems because you've been a smoker your whole life and you're diabetic and you're hypertensive and you're on a slew of medications and you cannot exist, your entire life is an emergency. I used to say that our average 911 call was somebody whose life was 7 out of 10 shitty every single day, and they called 911 because today was an 8 instead of a 9. That means they had a cough in addition to all the other problems they had. That's where our SNAP benefits are right now. The SNAP benefits in this country are not an emergency and should not be given emergency funding, because it's a well-known fact that every single end of September, beginning of October, we start a new government budget. That's how it's set up. So it's not an emergency when you've known for literally as many years as you want to predict into the future that there will be a requirement to pass a budget. There's a requirement to pass a budget every single year. That's the job of Congress, the power of the purse, as they love to remind us. That's the single biggest power under the Article 1 powers. You get to control the freaking federal budget. And that means you have to come together. 435 people have to agree to it. Well, a percentage of 435 people, right? And another 100 have to vote. And it's got to be 60 to be able to punch it in. And here's Warnock asking otherwise. People in the chat that are new, if you guys are new to the program and you're like, wait, did you just say that the Republicans are responsible for the shutdown? No, I said they should own it. Because the funny thing about hypocrisy is nobody wants to be told, one thing and then act another way. I think that the issue in Washington, D.C. is, and the reason why people think they can get away with hypocrisy is because they are not exposed to regular people. Imagine if somebody came up to you and be like, hey, man, a-hole, you spent all your money. Now you don't have any money. You'd be like, okay. Yeah, that's true. I did spend all my money. They'd be like, and now you're screwed. Now you can't go out on a date tonight. You're a teenager. You can't go out on a date tonight because you spent all your money and you don't have money for a date. You'd be like, I do want to go on a date, but I understand that I don't have any money. Even if I'm mad about it, I know it's my own fault. Why doesn't the Republican Party just say, you voted for certain things, we're going to shut down and have smaller government, we want smaller government, and no government is the smallest government. And we're willing to slash things as long as we need to because we're not going to compromise on these principles. And people will be like, we're really mad. But yeah, like that actually makes sense. It's the same people that you thought would not be able to get behind ICE and immigration enforcement. And you find out, oh, shoot, there's a bunch of Hispanic people that are really pro get rid of illegal aliens in all the places you go. You find out there's a bunch of black people who you thought were pro-crime for some reason because you're a Democrat. And then you're like, hey, how do you feel about ICE coming in and rounding up illegal aliens at Home Depot? And they're like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Like well, how do you feel about Trump putting in the National Guard and shutting down dangerous streets? And they're like, I can walk home. Yeah, I like it. And people go, oh my God, really? Wait, you're saying that people are actually comfortable with folks doing the thing they said they would do instead of hypocritically like trying to blame the other side? Trump could do it. He could pivot. He could be like, yeah, I'm running this shutdown because I actually want to have less government and I want less inefficiency and I'm going to use this as the tool and we're not going to compromise. So Democrats can come to the table or not. And if it means starving people out, yeah, that's what we're going to do. It's because they're inflexible and we have the power. That's the way you own the shutdown. You can say, we're going to do the things we're going to do. They may be responsible for not compromising, but it's not their shutdown. It's my shutdown. Stop kicking it away. That's not what he does. This is what he does. He's on the tarmac here talking about this, and that's going to lead us to air traffic control stuff since we're at a plane anyway.
So the shutdown continues. The Republican Party's not going to pay $1.5 trillion to illegal immigrants coming into our country, coming in for a lot of reasons, coming in from prisons, from jails, from all over the place, from Venezuela, many countries. We're not going to do that. So the shutdown continues. It's a Democrat shutdown. It's a Schumer shutdown because his career has failed and it's over. I met with President Zelensky, as you know, today.
So there you go. It's a Schumer shutdown and he sucks and so on and so forth. Yeah. That's not going to win. He was asked about what they were going to do about certain people and whether or not they were going to fund all the people after the shutdown happens. This is a really funny answer. This is really callous. This is why Donald Trump can do it and other people cannot. Because he's Donald Trump. Very few people can pull this off. It's the reason why I think he's in a unique position to be able to actually do the thing I just said, which is that he could own the shutdown and still make it a win. In the same way that, quote unquote, sending in federal troops to different cities has been a win for him. You could do this. But he doesn't. But he does say stuff like this, which is kind of the same. Why don't we just unify the messaging?
Is it the White House's position that furloughed workers should be paid for their back pay?
I would say it depends on who we're talking about. I can tell you this, the Democrats have put a lot of people in great risk and jeopardy, but it really depends on who you're talking about. But for the most part, we're going to take care of our people. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way. Okay? Thank you.
Do you want to hear that in a different way? Let's go to a cartoon. And how do they say it in cartoon land?
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Right? Some of you will not make it.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
And some of you will die from canceled food stamps. It's a sacrifice that 80s kids understand. You shot a squirrel. You have retrieved 3 pounds of meat. Right? I don't know. The expectation that this safety net is going to make sure that you survive and thrive and that everything will work. Like, that's Lord Farquaad from the Shrek series, which is funny. And he wasn't the least likable. Like, he was a villain in the thing, but he was also sort of like sympathetic. We sort of got a kick out of him. He was comedic relief. John Lithgow does a great job playing him. It actually looks like John Lithgow if he were going to be some sort of fake, tiny little Prince Charming, right? They don't have any consistency on this. You could own it and you could take control of it, or you can keep waiting. Here's the sympathy response that's going on. These are Republicans. There are Democrats. Everybody is trying to make the political play with air traffic control for some reason, which, by the way, in and of itself is kind of funny because air traffic control only handles people who are flying. And I don't think many of you are flying all the time, all the year. And if it turned out you were like, hey, no more flying, you do what my parents do. They just get in their RV and drive. You get in your truck, your car, and you drive. And it would take longer. You know, it's a lot shorter than the Oregon Trail used to be. It used to take months to go from one side of the country to the other. And now it might take, 2-3 days. If you're pushing it, it might take a week if you're taking your time and seeing the sights. But they are making air traffic control sort of the bargaining chip. And historically, that is a thing that has shut down shutdowns because people somehow feel really sympathetic about air traffic control. I never hear about it until there's a government shutdown and the essential workers have to work. They're not crying about ICE getting paid, by the way. They're not crying about other sort of law enforcement getting paid. It's just air traffic control. It's very interesting.
Just today, the American Federation of Government Employees, large union, came out and said, quote, "It's time to pass a clean, continuing resolution and end this shutdown today. No half measures and no gamesmanship." And the union went on to say today, quote, "Because when the folks who serve this country are standing in line for food banks after missing a second paycheck because of this shutdown, they aren't looking for partisan spin. They're looking for the wages they earned."
Yeah, and that's why there's a little bit of sympathy there, because they actually should get paid for doing the work, and it is a work that we've farmed out to the federal government. Whatever happened to this guy that is the Speaker of the House? Do you remember Smithers? He's still there. Smithers, Mike Johnson. He's such a good, strong, principled conservative. He's not going to do CRs, but they want to do a clean CR, but they're never going to do a CR. Here's 2023 Mike Johnson. You guys remember? This is why I get so pissed about this. Just own the damn shutdown and don't do a CR.
Committed to never being in this situation again. I'm done with short-term CRs. We're resolved. So what that means is you're going to see in the beginning of this next year, we'll be walking and chewing gum at the same time. We're going to get the appropriations process running on time as it's supposed to be under law. The Budget Control Act of 1974 has very specific provisions in there on how this is to be done. Congress hasn't done that for as long as we can remember. But we're going to get back to that because that's good stewardship. The American people deserve it. And the debt situation we find ourselves in necessitates that. So.
Yeah, that was 23 months ago, and Smithers is still doing what Smithers does. They're just liars. They're just liars. They just cannot be honest. Our debt situation necessitates it. We're done with CRs, so we're committed to that. We're committed to it so much so that we are not committed to it. In the same way that we've had people step into our government that were committed to fixing agencies, but they're not committed to it. Totally okay with it going on. Here's some more sympathy for ATC. Again, I can look at them and say, yeah, you should get paid for the work you're doing. Wouldn't this be an interesting opportunity to evolve this to the states? To stop? I don't know that we need to have a unified federal air traffic control system. I'm not confident we do. Why would you not have it? Like, you could have federal standards and then just hire them under the states. Then you don't have to have this problem. Maybe I'm too simplistic about it. I don't know. Here's the president of their union. I also really, really, really hate public sector unions. I don't think that you can, quote unquote, be a public servant and then also have a union that argues against the position that the public has created. Doesn't that seem problematic? I've always had a problem with that. Doesn't matter whether they're teachers or air traffic control. Here they are talking about it.
I am the president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, Nick Daniels. And I proudly stand here, but at the same time, I'm here to tell the story. I normally have prepared remarks for you today, but today isn't a day for prepared remarks. Today is a day to speak on behalf of the men and women, as the Secretary just said, that go in and day out and do the job of unsung heroes. They keep America safe. They keep America moving. But today, an air traffic controller showed up at their facility to see $0 in their paycheck. That air traffic controller just moved hundreds of miles from Oklahoma City after passing a grueling 4 months at Oklahoma City Academy, is at the lowest end of our pay scale, and has shown up to a job that pays them $0. They're trying to move in. They're trying to get set up on just even having a place of being able to put up for rent. And guess what's due in a few days? Rent for everybody. It's not the gas that they have to put in the car, the food that they have to put on the table. It's the stress that they now wear. This job is stressful enough. We go to work day in and day out and make thousands of decisions. We do it 5 days a week. Most of us actually do it 6. 5's hard enough, and we do it 6 and 10 hours a day. And now you add in the fact that we had a partial paycheck already, and we missed a full paycheck today. America's air traffic controllers are now having to focus on how do they put gas in the car? How do they take care of their children? How do they pay for childcare?
Yeah, all of that tells me that maybe the federal government shouldn't be handling this. Maybe we should devolve it to a smaller entity that can actually be controlled and keep a budget. Isn't that the answer? The answer is not throw shitloads of money and everybody should be financially insolvent and our country should go into further debt because a guy can't put gas in his car. It's like, yeah, that's a really micro problem. Sounds like he should be a member of a church. It sounds like he should be a person that is supported by his community. It sounds like his community should actually value that job because we think it's important. And I think we all agree air traffic safety is really a big deal for those of us that ever get on a plane. We want to not have to worry about it. So I'm down with that. But the answer is not like we have to fund the government because this guy. They always do this, though. They play on heartstrings. They always go out there and make a sympathetic cause. This is another example of it. This was put out by some professional group or semi-professional group. It's slightly better editing that I can do. It's slightly better than my little thing with the G5 jet from the beginning. But they're playing on heartstrings, and they're going out and doing this public campaign. Again, I hate unions. I hate public unions. I don't know how you can argue against the public good if you claim to be a public servant. And all of this tells me that it shouldn't belong in the federal government, which, by the way, should be the position of the Trump administration. They're like, yeah, we're going to spin this stuff off. We want to reduce the size of government. We're going to reduce the weaponization possibilities because we're going to give it back to states. That would actually be a real conservative position. We don't have that government. We have emotion.
Traffic controllers are among the federal workers receiving their last regular paychecks as the government shutdown drags into its 3rd week.
My wife and I are both FAA employees, which means we're both still continuing to go to work and doing our safety critical jobs while receiving no pay and no way to provide for our 2 young children.
I don't know when my family is going to get a paycheck so that we can pay our childcare, to pay our mortgage.
I'm a trainee. I'm a single mom to a 5-year-old. And I support my 13-year-old half-brother who's in foster care.
We're all working without pay, and that creates a lot of stress and anxiety. Missing a paycheck has kept me up at night and has been a huge distraction.
Missing a paycheck adds significant stress to all of us. It adds additional mental load that we shouldn't have to deal with.
Both my husband and I are air traffic controllers and not receiving a paycheck currently. And adding in the fact that we have a 4.5-month-old, it's starting to add stress into our lives.
Sounds sad. Very emotional. Sounds like some of you put all your eggs in the same basket, too. That doesn't seem smart. If you guys Google how many government shutdowns there have been many, and some of them substantive. And in my lifetime, there have been 4 long-term major ones in the last 40-something years. It's predictable that this could happen. You're relying on a public budget. So welcome to the world. The world is full of stress. Nobody gets a chance to live without stress. It turns out there used to be a lot more stress. I think that's why we had games like the Oregon Trail. I think it is. We used to be like, hey, do you think that your time on Earth is difficult? Sarah just died from typhoid. You're the only person from your party who made it to Oregon, right? Wasn't that the deal? You know how safe the net was there? There was a piece of canvas between you and hostile Indians, wild animals, really, really rough weather, difficult terrain, and you were doing it on a wood wagon with like wood wheels and a big animal that needed to eat that was dragging you across the entirety of the country. Like, it's very interesting when people are like, my life is really difficult. I've lost sleep in my beautiful house. Did you see that guy's house? He had the beams, the exposed beams in his house. Beautiful. It was well kept. He was living well. How many of you guys don't realize that, like, you should have been putting money away every single week that you had a paycheck for the years since the last shutdown? Why? Because you probably had that job in the last shutdown, the way that I did. It's crazy to me how suddenly people go like, I have failed to prepare for this emergency, and now my not emergency is an emergency, and it is your fault, and you must fix it. Is it working? Here's the argument, no. The argument is, by the way, it's not working. But it is interesting because I saw this push. There are more videos. I've got a whole computer full of videos of this stuff right now. I just don't want to burden you with it because it all popped up all at once in a period of like 3 days. Suddenly, it was all air traffic control all the time. Here you go.
Analyst Harry and Harry, we saw the troops. We talked about air traffic controllers. Not clear their pain will end the shutdown. One thing that might end a shutdown is political pain if parties start to feel that it's hurting them. So let's talk about that, starting with Republicans. How has the shutdown seemed to have affected their political standing?
Yeah, you might think, given that the Republicans are in charge of both the House and the Senate, that a government shutdown might actually hurt the Republican brand. But in fact, it hasn't. If anything, it's been helped a little bit. Take a look here, the shift in net popularity versus pre-shutdown. When we're looking at the Republican Party overall, that brand actually up 2 points. That's within the margin of error, but clearly it hasn't dropped. Come over to this side of the screen. Look at the net approval ratings for Republicans in Congress. It's actually up 5 points since pre-shutdown. So what we're seeing here is the Republican brand in Congress has actually improved somewhat compared to where we were pre-shutdown, despite the fact that Republicans control. And that's the math that John Thune and Mike Johnson are looking at is, well, hey, why should we give, and electorally speaking, when our brand has actually improved a little bit?
It's a great question. Why should you? There you go.
I would love for the public to reach out to their members of Congress and just say, hey, look, you need to find a solution, end the government shutdown.
What government workers are finding out is that most people don't realize where the federal government even touches their life. This is a propaganda video put out by the National Association of Air Traffic Controllers.
You talk about being in a job where you have to be 100% right 100% of the time. Now, on top of all of those things, you're putting on the stress of not getting a paycheck today. Not knowing.
Yeah, that's most people's job, actually. That's every ambulance driver. That's every person that's in a truck. That's a lot of people in certain logistics. That's every nurse who ever delivers medicine. That's every doctor who does surgery. All of these things are normal stresses for life. You have to be 100% right 100% of the time for a lot of the things you do in your professional life? Sure. Got it. Okay. It's also voluntary, by the way. Nobody made you become an air traffic controller. That's the other thing that it was like when people cried about losing the job. It's like, okay, that sucked. It's the reason why I moved on as fast as I did. I was like, this sucks. I had this job. I spent a decade trying to get a job and working at it and doing a decent job and not even being allowed to do the job that I could have been doing. My buddy was talking to me the other day. He's like, what a waste of time. The federal government spent all that time cultivating you into a capable employee. They kicked you out. And then they found out that you weren't going to let it go and that you're going to go ahead and apply your talents to like showing how much of a screw up they are. That you're going to continue to expose the shenanigans of the people that still work there. And they didn't ever find a use for it. And I'm like, yeah, well, luckily for me, I don't have to work for these people. And I'm happy about it. But they're not going to get any more of these because they've already gotten rid of the people that did those protected disclosures. They've already shown the people who still work there. And the people that work there are the ones that are willing to write these emails. You can fire a Walter Gardena. You can get rid of the people that may have, sort of silly, just worked and said, well, I don't feel good about this, but I'm going to keep doing it. You can get rid of all like a couple of the good Americans that have highlighted themselves, that have skylined themselves. There's an entire agency culture that exists like that. There's an entire federal culture that looks like this. It's what is my job? Did that guy ever say the valuable service that we provide for the community? No, every single thing he said was like me. He's like, I'm having a hard time. My job is really difficult. Every day I go to work as hard. How about the value of the service that you provide? The problem is just that nobody who works in quote unquote federal service thinks that they serve the people. They think the job serves themselves, which is probably the reason why people are stopping hiring. It's why people don't want to have. It's why employees are a pain in the ass. Ask anybody who's ever employed anybody. Having an employee means you're taking on pains. What's the old expression? They used to do something similar in the FBI. They would talk about your pain or your difficulties, right? They would say, little cases, little problems. Big cases, big problems. No cases, no problems. It's the same thing with employees, right? Few employees, few problems. Many employees, many problems. No employees, no problems. You want to know what it looks like? It looks like this. This is no employees. I have very few problems with employees. The only person I got to boss around is me. Some of you guys know that. Working for yourself makes you the hardest boss, but you're the easiest person to know what is and what doesn't work. And I don't ever have to act like I serve something I don't. Real simple. Anyhow, we're living in an interesting time right now, folks, and we're going to see a lot of people and some difficulties come out. Let's just at least put one thing to bed. Thank God. We found out that Donald Trump will not be running for a third term. Probably. The media has been dealing with this forever. He's been trolling with them for a very long time. This is ABC News reporting. President Donald Trump appeared to acknowledge Wednesday that he cannot run for a third term after previously declining to rule out the possibility, which made them ask him about the possibility forever. Quote, I have my highest poll numbers I've ever had. And you know, based on what I've read, I guess I'm not allowed to run. I don't believe him. I believe he knows that. So we'll see what happens, he said. That's not really ruling it out, is it? So goofy. He said, quote, I would say that if you read it, it's pretty clear I'm not allowed to run. It's too bad. We have a lot of great people. We have a lot of great people. I could run. It's been a great run. Mike Johnson, a.k.a. Smithers, who was never going to do another CR. You know he would immediately roll over and be like, there's probably a great reason for him to run because I don't know. I just don't say anything that's true. He said, quote, it's been a great run. I think the president knows, and he and I have talked about it and the constrictions of the Constitution as much as many of the American people lament that. I don't want another Trump presidency. I think you're nuts if you do. I think you're absolutely out of your freaking mind if you think we need another one. We can have an equally capable to Donald Trump, which means we get some of what we want and certainly not all of it at any time. There are unlimited numbers of possibilities of people who could bring on a mediocre-ish, sometimes getting it right, not always getting it right sort of situation. Just remember,
some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Less people can pull that off than Donald Trump, but not none. The number is not zero. So anyway, seeing people say, this is the most conservative president I've ever had. That's because you guys don't know what conservative presidents look like. How dare you guys say Rubio in the chat? Somebody said Rubio. Gosh. All right. We're going to end the show on that. I will remind you that you guys can watch us over on Spotify. And if you're not watching us on Spotify, then you're screwed up because it's the best place to watch on the replay. If you're going to go and listen to us, that's the way to do it because you can switch between audio and video. KyleSerafinshow.com. Check it out on Locals. If you guys want to be part of our call-in show, which will be tomorrow, it's KyleSerafin.com. Go be a subscriber there. Meet the great community. You can contribute to the show. Otherwise, like it, share it, subscribe to the channels, YouTube, Rumble, X, and so on. Thanks for being part of that. Let's do something funny. I do like mediocre impressions. This guy does a good series of impressions. I guess Nick Fuentes sat down with Tucker Carlson, which has gotten people up in arms. I could care less who talks to who. It doesn't bother me at all. The whole idea of quote unquote platforming people is not a big deal to me. Not even a little bit. I don't care. Talk to anybody. Have a conversation. Agree or don't agree. All easy. This is a very funny impression. And I don't really care about the take one way or another. I just think that people who do good impressions sometimes are really fun to watch. And so this guy does Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes. He's switching sides of the camera. Enjoy a little palate cleanse before we go and shut down for the day.
So how did you get fired from that job? What happened?
Well, I said that Jews were parasites and that they were controlling all the halls of power and they need to be fought at every level and that they never could be trusted and they were disgusting vermin. I called some of my colleagues Jew boys. You all need to be fought. You're disgusting parasitic creatures. And that Jews effectively are just this parasitic force in our society that's holding white men back. And I also said how blacks were racially inferior as well. So
that's it?
Yes. That was it.
Can't understand why that would upset people. And what happened next after that?
And after that, they just fired me, so.
Oh. And who likes parasites anyway? I mean, I don't know anyone who likes parasites. I had a stomach bug that was a parasite. I had diarrhea for a week. It was bad. It was bad, like really bad. I remember it was... I ended up having to see a gastro who was Jewish, actually. And oops, I guess they start it and they finish it.
Exactly.
And so you said all those things, you said them. What are your actual beliefs? Like, what do you believe?
I'm generally a good person. I'm a Catholic. I love everybody. I want everybody to succeed.
Right, of course.
I certainly don't wish harm to any people. I'm not a violent person. And I'm just a regular, fun-loving guy who wants everyone to prosper together.
So, despite everything you've actually said, like everything you've ever said, you don't actually believe all those things. You are actually a nice person, like a good person, a tolerant, mainstream person, despite all the things you've ever said or believed, really, like deeply held, hateful, disgusting beliefs. Despite all those beliefs and all the statements and all the things you've ever said, you're actually not those things. You're actually like a nice, good person, is what you're saying.
Yeah, despite everything I've ever said, ever, about anything and all of my kind of core beliefs, this is what I'm saying now.
It's so true. So true. You know,
That's such a good Tucker impression. I like Tucker. I like Tucker's. I like everything about Tucker. I think his delivery's great. The laugh is weird and quirky, but it's him. And I think he's really smart. I think Nick Fuentes is really smart. I think that is a really funny impression too. So enjoy that. I'll try to figure out who that comedian is. I'll go share it over on Locals if you guys want to see that. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope that made you smile a little bit. We could all just sort of laugh at the ridiculousness of everything. It's all ridiculous. It all tends to be. So it's not all bad. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. Who knows what sort of things will be delivered to us in our evening as we are apart. See you then.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.